Today we're focusing on the best HRM class you'll need, and this is going to cover various different topics. Obviously, one of the most important things is a lot of people ask, well, what's the best? The reality is there's a ton of good builds, and I'm going to give you the information that based on your preferences, you'll be able to build the class that best fits your individual playstyle. There's different variables you're going to want to consider. So some things could be as simple as aim down sight speed or Ironsights. What do they look like depending on which barrel you use? Sprint to fire time, is it a big difference? Do you prefer strafe speed or mobility? And then the overall recoil blots. As you can see in the background, this is me testing the various recoil blots where I got load in the game, shoot the wall, load in the game, shoot the wall, and then kind of compare these at the same scale so we can kind of get an idea of what is the best. So I went through, I did all that testing with a lot of different combinations, which we'll go ahead and dive into. But I also wanted to give a little bit of disclaimer around the recoil blots. There is a little bit of randomness, not a huge variance most of the time, but there is a little bit of variance from recoil blot to recoil blot. So realistically, if we wanted to get perfect data when it comes to recoil, we'd have to fire recoil blots 100 times of the exact same build and then compare them and choose kind of an average of how that looks. So obviously we didn't do that for 26 different combination of attachments. Is it accurate? To a certain extent, yes. Could it be more accurate? Yes, as well. So we get two different Ironsights here. So as we can see the comparison there, we have the one on the left, which is kind of like the base version or the Thorn, and the one on the right is going to be the one you're going to get with the Princeps long barrel, which is going to give you a little bit more range to make up for that nerf. If you want that a little bit of extra range and bullet velocity to make up for the nerf that it just had. So like I said, we're going to be comparing a lot of data here, and we can kind of see the green and the red, what these are. And what we can see here is this first section from 1 to 6 is pretty much the exact same build of barrel, underbarrel, stock, and mag. The only thing we're testing for here is the different muzzles. So we got the Jack BFB, which was pretty heavily nerfed, the Shadow Strike suppressor, the Zemin 35 compensator, the L4R flash hider, the Sonic suppressor, and then the Purifier muzzle brake. We can kind of see that we kind of swapped that out here, different barrel. And then same thing, we have those, but now we're using the Bruin Heavy Grip. So we used a various combinations here. So keep in mind that for every different attachment we try, then we got to add another grouping. So if you wanted to try ammo, rear grips, we're talking about like 100 different combinations here. So I'm not saying that those aren't valid. There's probably tons of them out there, but I kind of limited it to the most popular attachments that I think people are using it. So we can see here that a lot of these ones here, when you use the Bruin Heavy, that tends to slow you down quite a bit. That's kind of the common thing that these ones have here. It also hurts your general movement speed, which in this case isn't a huge difference at 0.3 difference from 4.8 up to 5.1. I'll go ahead and show you a comparison of these side by side to what they look like as well. And then the mobility, we have a mobility build here, which is actually this one's True Game Data's build that he liked. So I included that one because the attachments were so far different compared to what a lot of people were using. So I thought I'd include it because it did have a fast mobility build. And then on the far right, we can see kind of the minimap issue. So if you fire a suppressed weapon, you don't pop up on the minimap at all. The standard minimap dot is for 3 seconds, which we can go ahead and see the comparison here. 3 seconds is the one on the top left, and then on the bottom left is the Jack BFB, which has the 4-second one and the directional. It doesn't move in real time, but if you fire, it'll show where you're at. If you move, it still stays up in the exact same spot for 4 seconds, so you can redirect and use this to your advantage. And then we got the Zemin 35 compensator, which only lasts for 2.5 seconds. So it's actually slightly shorter than it appears. Now let's look at the difference in movement. So we have here is an aerial shot using the slowest build for mobility and the fastest build for mobility head to head. On the right, you'll see the mobility one isn't a huge difference. Even though it's as slow as 4.8 meters per second up to 5.3, not a huge difference in terms of overall movement and sprint speed. It kind of neutralizes itself out. The strafe speed, on the other hand, is a pretty noticeable difference. So if we stay on the slower end, which was 2.4 meters per second compared to the 3.7, you can see the strafe speed is definitely noticeable at that distance. So when it comes to this, is the stuff in red just mean that it sucks? No, just relative to some of these other builds, they might be going for something else. And it's really hard to quantify recoil into just a number. So we'll go ahead and take a look at the comparison there and kind of choose some of the best ones. So a couple standouts based on that, you might want to go go with this number 12 one here, which is the Purifier Princeps hand stop folding stock with the 50 round mag, because you get good ADS speed. Sprint to fire is comparable. It's not bad considering the AMR and the new RAM are pretty dang slow. Movement still within range. Strafe speed, not crazy bad or slow. It's kind of in the middle there. It will be slower than this mobility build. And then we get some decent muzzle velocity, which is going to help with bullet reg and get you a little bit further range, up to about 14.5 meters versus something like a 12.9. So you get a little bit more distance after that nerf. But if you want to go all in on range, maybe this one's going to be a good one. And you get the sonic suppressor. But then we have to look at the recoil blot. So you got to use that information, kind of maybe pick a few based off whatever the stat is that's most important to you, and then compare it by recoil. And we got a lot of builds. Like I said, if we added a couple more attachments, we could have had 4 times this many recoil blots, but I went in there, tried to make it as easy as possible to kind of understand what's going on without overcomplicating, even though it can get there pretty quickly. But we can kind of see the builds here, and this one, and the only difference between these two builds here from the top row and the bottom left row is the hand stop versus the Bruin heavy support. And on the right, the same thing. The difference between the left and the right is the barrel. So this barrel is different than this barrel, and you kind of see what lies out. Sometimes you might want less horizontal, less vertical, depending on your keyboard and mouse. There might be other factors that go into it versus controller. Overall though, if we just look at these, we get a Purifier one. That one looks pretty solid. Even though the vertical's not great, you can see it's kind of tightening it up. So maybe that's a good build. And then you'd have to kind of compare that, how it feels in game with ADS speed. Do you feel like you're hitting your shots? Because those little wiggles, sometimes that's just enough for you to miss a shot. And it goes from theoretical, that's pretty good, to a practical TTK that's pretty bad. And then we can see the Jack BFB is still pretty dominant in the recoil department. You can see the green line. It's giving us the lowest recoil across the board, no matter what combinations we're using. You can see that the flash hider on this one is pretty crazy. It almost makes it completely straight. And then we can see the Purifier on this one. So that kind of gives me a couple leaning towards that direction. The Zemin looks pretty good when you combine it on this bottom row with the Bruin heavy support. But again, those are a little bit slower builds. Then we have these two builds that I kind of combined a rear grip and True Game Data's build. And you can kind of see how those ones go. This one's more the mobility build. And you can see that one makes the line pretty vertical and straight as well. So based off of this, what the heck does that all mean? It will come down to what you prefer, but I'll give you a couple of those builds to kind of go ahead and try out for yourself and decide what makes the most sense based on your playstyle. So this is build number 1, which I like quite a bit. It's going to have that Archangel style Ironsights. It gives you a little bit of range, better bullet velocity, and the L4R flash hider kind of straightened out that recoil quite a bit with this build. So overall, this is kind of one I'm really liking based off of that. Obviously, it's going to give you that little bit of better hit reg, which I'm kind of a fan of. And you're still able to hit targets at a pretty decent range. You get the good sight picture, good visibility, the strafe speed, like everything comes out. This is kind of a jack of all trades build. I think obviously you can get better mobility, lower recoil, probably better bullet velocity, better range, but this one does good at a lot of stuff. And then if you're going to choose to switch this up because you want to run a suppressor, the suppressor build I would run is going to be with the sonic suppressor. Still pretty good. We're going to get actually an insane bullet velocity on this one, even though you're going to have a little bit more recoil than having that one. You're still going to be off the mini map, which is kind of nice. You'll be able to target that out and have control that way. Sometimes even visibility can be a little bit better when you're having a suppressor on, just to be able to see stuff clearer. And then that's kind of how you would utilize this one. And the bullet reg on this build is going to be amazing. Next up is going to be the build with the first barrel, which is that Thorn 90 barrel. So we can go ahead and utilize that one, which is going to be combined with the Purifier. The range on this one is not going to be amazing. I mean, 11 and a half meters is not the best, but this one's going to be close to like where you're going to be closing that gap a little bit more. You get like 4 meters less, which is kind of annoying, but the recoil control on this one is going to be much better with this specific one, especially since it's not getting as much shake going on. Those are 3 builds for you. But like I said, the whole point of the video is for you to be able to know what makes the most sense for you based off the information. Let me know if there's any other guns you'd like to see this done for. Appreciate all the support. Thank you for watching as always. Have a great day.